Our only agenda item tonight is AR 18-24, proposed amendment to the zoning regulations. Would the secretary please read the legal notice of public hearing?
Public hearing AR-18-04, proposed amendment to the zoning regulations. Amendments to sections 27.1.82, 27.2.82, 27.3.82. A, public hearing. B, public hearing closes, eligible for decision.
And I should point out this was emailed to the Department News to appear 2 times, Thursday, July 16th, and Thursday, July 23rd. Okay. Before we get started, I'd like to have the correspondence. Particularly the correspondence from the John
Can they talk much louder?
I'll move it closer.
The correspondence between the attorney and the planner created.
Chairman Michael Rossi, Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, 06413. Regarding planning comment on AR 18-024, proposed zoning amendments adding sections 27.1.82, 27.2.82, and 27.3.82. Chairman Rossi and PZC members, I've been asked to review the application number AR 180-024, proposing to add a new category of regulated uses to the use tables of section 27. The use to be added is, quote, commercial or industrial solid waste, construction or demolition debris disposal, recycling material transfer, or outdoor storage of materials not associated with a retail or contractor business, unquote. The applicant for this proposal is the Commission itself, and I've assisted in drafting these regulations. I have reviewed the comments provided by Attorney Roberts on June 18, 2018, in the current plan of conservation and development. Please consider the following notes. 1. Attorney Roberts' point that, given the fact that in section 27.2.82, there is no difference between the regulation of proposed use within 250 feet of residentially zoned land and that beyond 250 feet of residentially zoned land is a good one. The original proposed amendment had the use within 250 feet of residential zones as a special exception, SE, use with higher scrutiny and the use greater than 250 feet of a residential zone with a site plan review process. Because of the feedback from the Commission, this was changed for the public hearing version and is now proposed to be entirely within the special exception process. 2, for this reason, I would propose that the subsections A and B in each of 3 sections could be collapsed and the overall use regulation remain. In other words, that the references to distance from residential zones be removed and the use be allowed by special exception SE in the IP district and prohibited X in all other districts. 3, in response to Attorney Roberts' second comment, I would note that the special exception process for outdoor storage for wholesale businesses is regulated by section 12.45, warehousing and wholesale businesses. Other business uses that traditionally require outside storage of materials, such as a garden or landscaping supply business, are regulated with fencing, screening, or landscaping requirements. 4, Attorney Roberts' third point regarding the ambiguity of the phasing of existing residentially zoned land would be resolved by the removal of subsections A and B, as I propose in comment 2 above. This proposal arose from the fact that certain proposed activities, quote unquote, since withdrawn, did not neatly fit into a use category delineated in section 27, but there was concern that a zoning officer or commission would opt to allow a category or collection of uses that could be interpreted as allowed by virtue of being similar to allowable uses. This regulation aims to specifically define a use category and then regulate or prohibit it more explicitly. 6, the POCD does not explicitly comment on the proposed amendment, which is more of a use definition or clarification than an establishment of a new policy direction. The distribution center planning focus area and the Nod Road industrial planning focus area are the only areas in town specifically identified as being amenable to the development of future industrial uses. And this proposal would restrict it primarily to the Nod Road area, IP district. The reason for this generally limited geography of the distribution center between Route 145 and the Amtrak lines and the presence of residential uses generally surrounding it. 7, the distribution planning focus area recommendations, page 44, include the following. Revise zoning to ensure the full variety of acceptable uses would be permitted. Ensure through the use of landscape and buffer requirements that industrial uses do not unduly impact adjacent residential area. Both of these speak to the quote-unquote acceptability of uses relative to the adjacent residential area. While the Nod Road planning focus area, page 72, also notes the adjacent residential areas, it more explicitly encourages industrial development in this area and encourages that development proposals are sensitive to these neighbors. To my read, this speaks to the special exception process and requiring that development clear that high bar. In brief, with the proposed changes noted in comment 2, I believe that this proposal is a good clarification of existing and potential uses and is a regulation that is supported by the goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development. Please contact me if you have any questions about these comments. Thank you. Respectively submitted, John B. Gazowski, AICP Consulting, Town Planner. Julie Pundin, Land Use Technician, Clinton Planning and Zoning, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, 06413. Regarding proposed zoning regulation amendment AR 18-024, our file number 2226.0001. Dear Julie, as I requested, I have reviewed the application number 18-024, proposing to make changes to sections 27.1, .82, 27.2, .82, and 27.3.82 to the zoning regulations. I have the following comments on the proposed amendment. 1, since the treatment of areas within 250 feet of residentially zoned land and land greater than 250 from residentially zoned land is the same, why are there separate sections? 2, how is the outdoor storage of materials for a wholesale business treated? And 3, the use of the word, quote-unquote, existing as a qualification of a residentially zoned land is somewhat confusing. If it is intended to protect the use allowed by special permit under section 27.2.82 from future zone change to residential, it could be superficious as it would be a valid non-conforming use. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns. Yours truly, Richard P. Roberts, Alderman Sage LLP. No, we got one more. Oh, yeah. Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, 06413, regarding testimony on proposed zoning regulation amendment AR-18-024. Dear Commission members, my name is Todd Berman, and my wife Lynn McColgan and I have lived at 11 Bright Hill Drive in Clinton. I have considerable experience in dealing with the siting of all types of industrial, commercial, waste management, and energy-related infrastructure. I've attached my bio for your consideration. You will note it includes considerable time serving on Connecticut Deep committees dealing with different aspects of waste management, as well as the local municipal level public service in Killington. Lynn and I would like to provide this testimony in support of proposed amendment AR 18-024. Facilities which manage commercial and/or industrial waste, construction and demolition waste, as described in the proposed amendment, represent a unique set of risks for adjacent residential communities or sensitive environmental habitats. Thus, the proposed amendment is appropriate and good policy for our town. It has been my experience that waste management and transfer facilities of this type present risks to adjacent residences, failing to preliminary 3 silos. 1, the introduction of previously unidentified contaminants of concern to the site. For example, it is now common knowledge that PCBs are found in window caulk regularly encountered in construction and demolition wastes. Management of these PCBs containing wastes are tightly managed under the federal TSCA regulation. However, smaller facilities often do not seek out the proper permitting authority for the handling of these wastes, nor do they screen incoming materials to evaluate the potential for these contaminants to arrive on site. Site contamination creates risk for nearby residences in the community. 2, free drain liquids from incoming materials. The idea that incoming materials from demolition and construction sites are dry is a myth. Permit submissions always read, quote, incoming waste materials will be dry or, quote, free of free drain liquids. They never are. Hydrocarbons, metals, volatiles, and semi-volatiles are often commingled with the liquids and trained with these mixed wastes, and these contaminants are often find their way into local wetlands via stormwater flow and or insufficient contaminant. This creates an unnecessary risk for the community, adjacent residences, and sensitive habitats. 4, operations often do not match permit conditions. It has been my experience that the markets for recovery of certain materials and cost disposal of others is a consistently shifting landscape of proposal price and recovery value. This leads waste management facilities of the type described in the amendment to adopt practices inconsistent with initially intended or permitted operations. Practices often include stockpiling of materials, waiting for disposal prices to change, stockpiling of materials, waiting for value of recovered materials to increase, stockpiling leads to space utilization challenges, acceptance of materials not originally permitted if recovery values are sufficient. These practices create additional risks for nearby property owners and sensitive environmental habitats. Likewise, this creates a burden on the community to monitor the operations for compliance at a time when Connecticut Deep Resources to monitor compliance with permit terms on a steady decline. For these reasons, we strongly support the proposed amendment. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Tom Berman and Lynn McCummon, 11 Bright Hill Drive, Clinton, Connecticut.
Thank you. The way we run our public hearings is that we are here to get information from the members of the public. Thank you. We're here to get information from members of the public. We will start by asking people to come up and sign in advance so that we know who's giving us testimony. And we ask first for those who are speaking in favor of the amendment, followed then by people who want to discuss opposition to the amendment, and finally we'll have comments from those who have just general comments to make. We ask that you do not come back up a second time until everyone has had a chance to speak, because we do have a fairly good group of people here, and I want to make sure that those who want to speak have that opportunity. We also will ask that you make sure that your comments are directed towards the amendment itself, not towards potential uses as a result of the amendment, or I should say potential applicants. With that said, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the amendment? Please come forward and sign in. You can sign in advance too. And I'll ask that when you start your testimony, you state your name and address for the tape. This hearing is being recorded as required by state statute, so it is being taped. Might want to move that down so you can hear. Just do this.
Thank you very much for all your concerns for our town, because we certainly do meet your concerns.
Name and address, please.
And my name is Judith Gaines Hirsch, 54 Founders Village. My village is directly impacted by this proposal, and we totally appreciate it because we do not want the carcinogens and the smoke, the bugs, the dirt, and our roads being ruined. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Phil Sengel, 25 James Vincent Drive.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat that, please?
Phil Sengel, 25 James Vincent Drive. And I want to say that I'm speaking on my own behalf. My comments are my own opinions, nobody else's. And I do not live near any proposed recycling sites that I'm aware of. So I'm not here to speak. I will speak for this change, but I'm not speaking because I live near any proposed site. So I do support these proposed regulations. The creation of industrial recycling centers, in my belief, will change Clinton forever in a very bad way. They are a risk to our quality of life, and I congratulate you for considering our protection. I believe PZC members who oppose this regulation would not do so if they live near any potential recycling sites. Sometimes folks say they will remember your vote on a particular issue at the next election. But I believe this seldom happens. But this issue may be an exception. We are on the verge of seeing some real positive economic change in town that has strong potential to set us on a wonderful upward course. Not passing this regulation change would jeopardize our opportunity to change course just as we are poised for growth. Why would you want to do that? It is your duty to protect the town and pass regulations that encourage beneficial economic growth. Therefore, I strongly urge you to support the proposed changes. Thank you.
Who's next?
Vince Amino, 26 Old Mill Road. We saw recently just how important this issue is to the entire community. And the regulations do not permit these type of dumps for a reason. They never imagined that anyone would ever try to put them in established residential areas. So it's a part of your process, your duties, to tighten up the regulations when opportunistic type developers try to squeeze something in. So you can't prevent that unless we tighten up the regulations. And I commend you. I'm in favor of this amendment, and I certainly hope that you will pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Jim Conley, 11 Iroquois, Clinton. I think that the common sense quality of this set of proposed regulations is absolutely obvious. It's a novel use. It's one that hadn't been considered previously, and this simply regulates it to the part of town where it might conceivably be acceptable. In any other part of town, the massive recycling of construction waste, industrial waste, with all its contaminants and so on, would obviously be extremely dangerous to residents and to the population as a whole. Therefore, I am speaking in favor of the proposal. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to be very interested to see what arguments are being made against it. Thank you.
Jason Adler, 8 Sassafras Lane, Phillips Town. So I'm also in favor of the amendment, especially as presented by the committee tonight, where they would condense A and B together. I think it just makes sense. My concern, in addition to that, and I hope the committee can address it, is if there is an applicant in front of another committee currently in Clinton, is it possible that they could get out of this new process that we hope to be approved either tonight or in the near future? It doesn't need to be answered now, but I hope tonight you can address whether that has been foreseen by the lawyers. But overall, I'm very much in favor of this and would like to see it implemented immediately.
Who's up?
Lynn Posner. Lynn.
Well, let's go on. Oh, she's got to come back. Who are we waiting for?
Lynn Posner signed in.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Walton, 24 South Parkway, Clinton. I also am here with my mother, who's on 50 Carriage Drive in Clinton. And I'm in support of stricter regulation, stricter language, so that I would even propose that it be stricter. I don't want this to happen at all. It will definitely affect my mother's area directly, and also I believe the town itself, and I thought we were moving ahead to be stricter as far as our environment, our children, our families, etc. I think it would be disastrous to allow this. Thank you.
I'm Lynn Posner. I'm president of Founders Village, and on behalf of Founders Village, which is an association of nearly 100 units, we believe the amendment should be condensed as stated by you as a board this evening.
Thank you.
Kurt Carr, 9 Oscar Cronan South. I have some material to pass around. The material that you'll be receiving includes statutes relating to solid waste and your right as a zoning board to regulate that within the municipality. So you do have a right to do what you're doing. I'm here to support that, as a matter of fact, because I agree with what people have said, that this is probably not a step forward for them. Also included in that packet is a list of 29 volume reduction facilities that are already registered with the, I think that's enough facilities. I don't think the state needs more, and they certainly don't need more in the town of Clinton. The other thing that I've included in your packet is that zoning area IP, which shows you the surrounding areas. And you can see how many residential properties there are that abut the IP zone. But what you may not be aware of, if you look at that, I've also highlighted residential properties that are in the IP zone. These properties are listed on the vision appraisal field cards as being residential except for one. My guess is that most of the people that live in these residential properties, if they've been checking out those cards, would be shocked to find out that their residences are in the IP zone. I think the attorney's recommendation that you eliminate or or do something about it. I don't think he actually suggested that you eliminate these two. He's just asked why do you have both of them in here. And I would suggest that there's a good reason to have them both in here, and that is that there should be an X in the first one, which basically would say it's prohibited in under 250 feet. And then permitted under a special exception beyond that. There should be a buffer, not only between residential zones, but also residential properties. And good zoning makes good neighbors, and that's what you're here to do, is to make sure that the neighborhoods that are here, that are established, are not disadvantaged by changes. One other thing is that your regulations basically say that anything that isn't specifically permitted is prohibited. So in some ways, this opens the door to permit this. So the thing is that it's really important to have the X's every place that you really want the X's. And I suggest that anything within 250 feet of a residential property, not just a residential zone, should be prohibited. And that language also should be tightened, that it should not just be residential zone, but also a residential property. I also want to congratulate you and thank you for the initiative you've taken on this. It's very important to the people of Clinton. They've obviously expressed their passionate concerns about this kind of development in Clinton. I too do not live anywhere near the IP zone. This is not NIMBY. This is basically good public policy which you've been elected to put in place. And I want to thank you for doing that.
Hi, I'm Joyce Allen. I live at 13 Indian Drive, Clinton. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I know you've put a lot into this. I am approving of it. The only thing that upsets me is how come Guilford, Madison, Westbrook, and Saybrook, nobody's gone to those towns? Why don't they go there? Why do they have to come to Clinton? Because we look like we are the ones that are going to fall for this bull. Thank you.
Microphone has to come down for shorter people. Hi, I'm Pam Fritz, I live on 14 Mill Road. I'm president of the Clinton Taxpayers Association. I'm really here speaking on behalf of our association. It is very definitely our position that we are very much in favor of these changes. I think that we have had and experienced, and I've served on the Planning and Zoning Commission with some of you, as you know, years past. We have experienced some real serious issues with spot zoning in Clinton. And there are many areas that really are, where the taxpayers are very concerned because their residential houses and their property values are such that they abut much closer to industrial zones than probably, frankly, should have been permitted a long time ago. I'd like to back up on Kirk Carr's statement because I also looked at the 29 facilities, which I think Connecticut's a pretty small state. I think 29 facilities of the type that are mentioned in this document are quite enough. And but I'd like to back up on that. I think that we should be protecting our. We need to move forward in Clinton, but we have to do it in a wise way. And that's why I commend all of you for coming forward with these regulations, because they are much needed. But I think they may need to go further at another meeting, at another hearing. I think that the X should be for this type of facility, should be for all, including IP, because as was just mentioned and as we have observed, there are people whose residential properties and whose residences are in IP. And many of these people's residences, I've been to many a hearing where it's been brought up, well, you shouldn't be living so close to an industrial zone. Well, gee whiz, it wasn't industrial when I bought it. When I bought the property, there was no industrial near me. I've heard people say this over and over again. There was nothing industrial in the area. Or there was maybe some industrial, but I can think of situations like on Knott Place. I can think of the situations that are on 145 right now, including myself, I will say, but there are many, many others, where the properties, when I purchased 30 years ago, I lived at this particular home, there wasn't the industrially zoned properties close to me at all. So who came first? And are we to take our citizens who have lived in this town in their homes for so many years and say to them, it's just too bad that you happen to be now that we've changed this to industrial? So commend you on what you're doing, and please keep doing it. And I can't possibly imagine how any member of the Planning and Zoning Commission in their right mind would not be in favor of this change in this regulation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this proposed change, proposed amendment? Thank you. At this time, then, I would invite forward people who would like to speak in opposition to this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Cronan. I'm familiar to most of you. I'm an attorney at law. I practice at 20 Water Street, Guilford, Connecticut, the firm of Cronan and Shields.
You can't remember.
I can't help that. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'll do the best I can. Before speaking, it's been my normal experience that there's an opportunity to ask some clarifying questions. May I take that opportunity now before I render any remarks?
Certainly.
I'd like to begin by trying to get a better understanding. Does that help everybody if I hold this closer? Okay. I tried to follow the proposed changes, the changes proposed by Mr. Guskowski in the letter that was written at the beginning of the hearing. I'm working off of a document called Public Hearing Version. It was published on June 14th, 2018. So I guess my first question is that a good base document to work off of and against which to consider Mr. Guskowski's changes, or is there some more recent version than that?
It is a reasonable document to work off of, although we have the additional comments from the planner that have added to that a little bit.
In the correspondence read this evening, exactly. So in an effort to understand, so I can just keep track of what Mr. Guskowski proposed, I'm looking at new section 27.2.82, and I see, and I think I understand the point that I think it was Attorney Roberts made, that there's no real difference between the inside of 250 feet and outside of 250 feet. So I can understand the compression of doing away with the 250-foot number. In the I-1 zone, is it still an X? Yes? In the I-2 zone, is it still an X?
Yes.
And in the IP zone, is it special exception?
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. May I ask, when did the idea for this specific zone change first arise?
It came about because this was a series of uses that we do not allow explicitly, but we were concerned that issues, it could be misinterpreted as being allowed by being closely related to other uses that are covered. So that's how this came about.
So when did that take place? On the calendar, roughly.
When did we put this forward? Well, it was about 60 days ago, or more than that, but, because we had to have a 60-day review period.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that's relevant. I mean, we're trying to bring good, strong regulations to the town, protect the town. When we did it is a moot point.
Is it appropriate to ask Mr. Cronan if you're representing a client? Or
Yes, yes, I am. I'm representing Shoreline Rail and Recycling, 30 Old Post Road. Okay, that'll become clear in a moment.
Is he a resident, not a resident of Clinton? Is he a...
No, he's...
Mr. Chairman, would you please maintain order?
Go ahead and continue.
Thank you. Did the proposed amendment come out of a PZC subcommittee?
I don't see where that's relevant.
Well, it's just a question that's going to have to be answered at some point. Do you want to answer it tonight? Was there a subcommittee, sir?
No.
There was no subcommittee. Where?
This came from my request to the planner to look into the situation.
Okay. Now, why is this regulation aimed specifically at recycling?
As I said before, this is a use that is not allowed under current regulations, but we were concerned it would be rolled into other uses that are allowed.
And I thought I'd say, Mr. Chairman, it is not specifically drafted to give your client any issue.
Well, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Why, since this, so I gather that one of the driving forces of this regulation is to clarify that recycling isn't kind of anticipated in any of the other permitted uses, correct? Okay. Why did you choose not to make recycling a defined term in the regulations as part of this whole amendment process?
That would probably be a good follow-up proposal.
Okay. If you do not define recycling, am I correct that it will be interpreted as having its normal meaning?
Sorry?
I cannot tell you how it will be interpreted.
All right, well then, I'd like to ask, one of the uses that's permitted is boat repairs and such things. So if in the course of repairing a boat, which is a permitted use, I used recycled or used parts, would that fall within this prohibition or not?
Of course not.
Of course it would.
Now, please stick to your testimony. What is your testimony?
Well, I'm trying to get, you agreed I could ask some questions of clarification. I actually I only do have one more question, and it's a very important one. Has any member of this PZC discussed this zone regulation change with any present member of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Clinton?
I can only speak for myself and say that I have not.
You have not. Can we go down to the board? So I'm not allowed to find out whether or not this board has had conversation with anyone from the selectmen's office.
It is not pertinent to the...
It would only be pertinent if it turned out that the genesis of this.
I was the person who asked the planner to do this.
Excellent.
And I did not speak to it for selectmen about it.
Can you, sir, state whether the commission has complied with...
What is this, a deposition? Let him speak, come on.
No, please let him speak.
Get the town attorney. It's ridiculous. Sounds like a deposition.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me whether the commission has complied with the statutory requirement found in section 8-3A, which says that when you file a zone change, you have to file a description of the property affected in the town clerk's office. Do you know whether that's been done, sir?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Thank you. You read a letter from a Mr. Tom Berman. Can I ask if he's here this evening? He submitted the letter, so he's not available to...
Just this evening, he left the premises.
Excellent. I tried to listen to the letter. I did not hear anything in the letter that raised any concerns about the uses permitted in 27.2.76 and 22.277, which are flammable explosive materials and oil, propane, gasoline tanks. So he has no opinion on whether or not those are troublesome. Would that be a fair conclusion?
I can't speak for him.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I do have a few more questions, but I'd like to do them in letter form. I have for you a letter dated today that I'd like to submit for the record as an exhibit, and I'd also like to submit pages 39 through 44 from the Clinton Plan of Conservation and Development. Will you accept that into the record, sir?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
It's okay. The letter does contain a number of questions that I decided to put in letter form because I've had past experiences in front of zoning boards where the transcript gets a little muddled and garbled because of papers rustling and side conversations and stuff. It does ask that the commission take the time to answer those questions and provide answers to those questions in order for me to be able to protect my client's vested rights without violating any kind of due process. It would probably require either a recess and the answers tonight or a continuance. Either would be acceptable to me. I do represent Shoreline Rail and Recycling. They bought the old Unilever warehouse, which is specifically referenced in the POCD. I think the POCD is a little bit dated because it talks about my client's plan to rebuild in 2015. Just for the record, and those of you who may not have been in town or on a planning board, that building fell down after my clients purchased it. It fell down and had to be rebuilt. But it couldn't be rebuilt because it was filled with hazardous substances, which my client remediated. And the process of getting the permits to remediate it took us past the period that the Clinton zoning regulations allows for variances. It says if the building falls down, you've got X number of years to rebuild. If you don't rebuild within that period, you lose it. Sir, you seem to have an agenda that
Please let me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, point of order is
You
right.
told not to discuss a specific thing, and he's doing that.
Yes, please limit your comments to the amendment.
To the regulation amendment. I will do that, and I do apologize. I did kind of get off track on all of this. I've submitted the list of questions. I do look forward to hearing your response, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight.
We'll talk to the commission after everybody.
No, I just had a point of clarification.
Okay.
Mr. Cronan submitted a letter, and the secretary clarified who the author of the letter is, please, for the record.
Well, it's me.
Okay, well, that's clear. How many pages?
The author of the letter.
Tom C. Cronan, that's right. Counsel for Shoreline Rail and Recycling LLC.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this amendment? Okay, are there any general comments that people would like to make? Please come right and sign your name.
So Vince Amino, again, I've already signed in and I've spoken earlier, but what I'd like to do right now is just speak about why this is so important. This is just a general comment. This is really important because we just witnessed exactly what we want to prevent, and that is from a developer hiring an attorney to be able to look at our regulations, which like every other town may not be perfect. However, here's an opportunity to tighten them up and to do what you really want to do and what I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission wanted from the very start. They just didn't envision, and you can't envision everything that's going to come down the pike, but now you have a better handle of what might be possible if you don't tighten these regulations. So again, I commend you for taking this up, and I do hope that you'll tighten these regulations. Thank you.
My name is Tim Burns. I live 500 Path. Just a general comment. I'm a kayaker in the area. I live a mile from the site and a quarter mile from the boat launch on Route 145. This time of year, there's a lot of people crowding there, off the dock, off the bridge. I see people flying down 145, going from 95 to get to the shore. And it's very dangerous as it is. That boat launch is going to be rebuilt. There's a posted sign there in the next year or two, and I'm anticipating it being a bigger launch area. So I think the traffic there, as far as kayakers and people boating, is only going to increase. And it's just a general comment, and I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, it's me again. I just want to say that this is expected when you have a company that's a multi-million-dollar or even more profit-making organization, and they have a good attorney who's going to really try to force this. This is not what the people who are here want. It's not what the people of Clinton want. It's not what our children and our grandchildren want. We really need to stand fast. All the other meetings I thought were wonderful. I thought we got somewhere, and then, of course, just like anything else, they have to reapply because they don't give up. But they don't know that these are people that are here, old Yankees, maybe some American Indian, who protect the earth, protect our town, who care about our children and grandchildren, and we depend on you guys to help us. We do not want this in Clinton. Thank you. I just had to say it one more time.
Okay. Again, I would ask if you are speaking for a second time that it be new information.
Kurt Carnine, Austin County South. Tom Swift once said it was a brave man, First Lady Oyster. There's an even braver man who stood up and urged you to vote against this amendment. So I guess I can respect that bravery, although I'm sure it's well compensated.
Please don't attack me.
I'm not attacking anybody. We do not inherit the environment from our parents. We borrow it from our children. The decision that you're going to make tonight is to protect that legacy for generations to come. It's an important decision. I would urge you not to be buffaloed by an attorney. Stand your ground. We have attorneys too. And stand your ground and fight for what's right and what's best for Clinton, and you'll come out on top. Don't be buffaloed by this attorney once again.
This is very hard on all of us, especially on you. But I'm going to say something that probably a lot of people up here are not going to want to hear. What is proposed to be put in the area that they're talking about is carcinogenic. It's lead flying around the air. Our children, wait a minute, hold on. I listen to him, you listen to me. Our children are being affected by this, and our grandchildren and our earth. Please, please, don't let anything happen to us. Thank you.
I just forgot to say the one thing I wanted to say is when you go 95 now, I have never seen so many waste trucks that are so dangerous and travel so fast. Their tires are bald most of the time. They're emitting all kinds of smoke and everything else from their exhaust because I don't think anyone's inspecting these trucks. And we're going to add this many more, and in our own town. It's unbelievable. That's all I wanted to just share is like when you're driving, just notice how many of those blue, red, gray trucks there are that are dangerous.
Again, please limit your comments to the application. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to general comment?
The board hasn't addressed my question, my previous question. Should I restate it?
We'll try to do that when we discuss it. What I would like to ask now, we got another general comment?
Darby Hill, 1411 Well Road. Just want to say thank you to all of you for your commitment to the town. Starting with this whole thing about a year ago, it's been a real eye-opener in terms of figuring out how the town works, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and getting involved has I think probably helped not only me but everyone understand how important it is to be part of the community. We moved here about 20 years ago from a small town in Pennsylvania, and didn't really want to leave home, but this has become our home. Kids were born at Yale, and been here for 20 years. Our son just graduated from the New Morgan High School last year, and we're so happy to be part of the town. And the work that you're doing to make the changes, as has been mentioned, it's so hard as a town, I think, to have all regulations in place that are perfect. It's impossible. And so it's sort of a living, everything's like a living document and it's changing all the time. And so thank you for that. And you should just know we're all behind you, and you're not alone. We're all part of your town, and we're all with you. We're all on the same team. So thank you for your service, and good luck with your decision.
Al Engel, 95A Capitol Road. I just want to say, I just remember was it the last meeting or the meeting before that, a young fellow came up and said, my baby is either just born or about to be born. This thing comes in, I go out. And that is what is going to happen to our community. This thing comes in, we are going to lose our community. This thing cannot come into our community. And I try to read.
Keep in mind, this is not about a specific applicant who may be coming in. This is about the regulation.
Well, see, I don't even understand this regulation. But what it seems to me, the regulation is allowing some sort of an entrance by hook or by crook into our community. And I don't want to see, the people of this community do not want this thing here. And I hope to God, if somehow these guys from Guilford want it so bad, let them put it in their community, not here. Please vote against this. Well, whatever it takes to not let this thing in, that is what I desire, and I think I didn't see anybody come up here to defend this thing coming up here. I feel sorry for the poor guy that put his money into it, but he shouldn't have done that. That's on him. This should not be here. Thank you.
Are there any other general comments? In that case, I would like to have the letter that was presented read into the record.
July 30th. July 30th, 2018, Mr. Michael Russell, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Clinton, Clinton Town Hall, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, regarding application AR 18-024. Dear Mr. Rossi, this letter advises that our firm has been retained by Shoreline Rail and Recycling, LLC, SRR, to represent it before your commission in application AR 18-024, the proposed amendment of sections 27.1.82 and 27.2.82, which will, if adopted, prohibit, quote, commercial and industrial solid waste construction or demolition of debris, disposal, recycling, material transfer, or outdoor storage of materials not associated with a retail or contractor business, end quote. This broad prohibition has mitigated to some extent by the provision that such activities could be allowed in the IP zone by special exception permit. This proposed action by the Planning and Zoning Commission is of particular interest to our client who purchased the property located at 30 Old Post Road, which was and is located in the I-2 zone, inasmuch as the proposed regulation amendment appears to threaten the continued use of this site in a manner legally authorized. Our client will take all steps necessary to protect its vested rights in this property. We are particularly concerned by the paucity of information in the files of the Land Use Office identifying the original motivation for this proposed change. It is our firm position that the uses which our client intends to make of the property and continue to make of the property are permitted by present zoning regulations, which the Commission seemingly seeks to abridge. Worse still, the proposed regulations not only do not comport with the Town of Clinton Plan of Conservation and Development, they are in direct conflict with the goals and objectives stated herein. Thus, it is difficult to see the proposed amendment as anything other than quote-unquote spot or quote-unquote contract zoning. In consideration of those concerns, we have several questions for the Commission to answer before voting on this regulation amendment or any further amendment thereof. The answers to these questions will help build an adequate record in the event of any appeal. I have chosen to put these questions in letter form because in past matters involving other clients and sometimes other land use agencies, the record and transcript have not been provided a full picture of the proceedings, which would, of course, be a necessary element of any court appeal. 1. How does the Commission propose to correlate the provisions found in proposed regulations with the uses currently permitted in sections 27.2.60 and 27.2.61? 2. How does the Commission propose to correlate the prohibitions found in the proposed regulations with the uses currently permitted in sections 27.2.67? Will the uses permitted by section 27.2.67 be exempt from the prohibition found in the proposed regulation against the, quote, outdoor storage of materials, unquote? Where in the text of the proposed regulation can such an exception be found? 3. On what zoning theory or other basis has the Commission relied in determining that, quote, storage of material which is dangerous due to explosion, fire hazard, or radioactivity and, quote, commercial oil, propane, and gasoline storage tanks, end quote, can be permitted in the I-2 zone, albeit by special exception, but, quote, recycling, unquote, is prohibited altogether. 4, please identify on the record the specific basis for proposing this amendment and explain why it is expressly limited to, quote, commercial or industrial solid waste, construction or demolition debris disposal, recycling, material transfer, or outdoor storage of materials not associated with a retail or contractor business, end quote. 5, please state on the record the names of all elected town officials who have communicated with any commission member about this proposed regulation amendment. 6, please confirm on the record that the record includes copies of all notices sent by the commission staff to SCR, COG, and other adjacent towns. 7, how will the proposed regulation affect the properties that are bifurcated by the 250-foot line described in the proposed regulations? 8, please state on record whether the commission has complied with the CGS section 8-3 subsection A and filed a description of the boundaries of the proposed zone change with the Clinton Town Clerk. 10, please identify on the record the specific sections of the Town of Clinton Plan of Conservation and Development which serve as the basis for this proposed regulation amendment. 10, with respect to the section of the POCD specifically directed to that area of the town where the client's property is located, distribution center focus area, please explain how the proposed regulation amendment is consistent with and in furtherance of the following provisions of the POCD. A, page 39, the town, quote, would anticipate and encourage increased mixed-use commercial and industrial development, end quote. B, page 39, quote, these areas are primarily locations where the town would look like to support existing and foster new businesses. C, page 40, the town should foster a policy of increasing uses allowed by site plans and zoning permits. D, page 44, encourage industrial and large-scale commercial uses by modifying zoning approach to encourage more site plan review uses and fewer uses that require special exception. E, page 44, make use of railroad by encouraging rail-dependent businesses. Thank you in advance for your cooperation in responding to these questions and requests. Both I and my client believe that complete and accurate answers to these questions will contribute to an adequate record on which the Commission's decision might base its decision. We look forward to your responses and specifically request that your Commission vote to keep the public hearing open until such a time as those responses can be provided, reviewed, and vetted. Given the potential that this regulation amendment might have grave, substantial, and possibly disproportionate adverse effects on our client, we believe that this approach provides the best protections for our client's due process rights. We look forward to receiving the responses. Very truly yours, Thomas E. Cronan, Esquire, Counsel to Shoreline Rail and Recycling, LLC.
With that, is there any further comments from the public? I'm sorry. Was I heard? If you've been here, please, I'm trying not to have too many repeat people.
And that is, Mr. Cronan is certainly welcome to ask any questions he wants to, but you're not obliged to answer them all and go on the record in a way that would perhaps put you in a bad situation in court. If he wants to try to get this information, I guess he can go to court and subpoena it and do all that, but you shouldn't be making it easy for him.
With that, I would like
Sorry, Chairman Rossi, but this only has to do with the letter that was just read. And I just want to remind the Commission that quite a while ago now, I wrote a letter to both the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the Board of Selectmen, clearly stating that the previous use at the subject property, and the only reason why I'm talking about a subject property is because this attorney is representing one specific client, and that the previous use was warehousing. The proposed use includes recycling. Recycling is not the same as warehousing. My letter was presented to the town attorney, and the town attorney agreed that recycling is not the same as warehousing. So it is not the continuation of a previously established use. it would require a change of use application, which has never been submitted. And I just wanted to remind the commission of those facts.
One more. Simon, please.
My name is Loretta Beatty, and I live at 11 Hideaway, and I want to remind the commission that that lawyer represents one person in this town. Everybody else represents the town. So, thank you.
At this point, I would like to see if there are any comments from the commission that people want to make at this time. In that case, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have a special meeting scheduled for immediately following this to consider the application. So if you want to, we don't take testimony at that time, but if you want to hang around, I would like a 5-minute recess.